Today on the Genius Brewing channel, we are going to be tasting 3 different variations of the same Saison made with 3 different yeasts from Omega Yeast Labs. I am joined with Todd Grove from River City Brewing. He's the head brewer and just an excellent beer taster. Great person to have next to you.
Sheesh, thanks.
Yeah. So we're just going to be jumping in and tasting 3 different Saison strains. One is Jovaru, one is Coast to Coast, and one is Saisonsteins Monster. Those are the 3 strains from Omega that we took the exact same batch of beer, recipe linked below, and split it off into 3 different fermenters and fermented them simultaneously in the exact same conditions, side by side.
They look so much different considering the base is the same.
The first thing that I'm going to take, I'm going to start with the Saisonsteins Monster, but that's notably clearer than the rest of them. On the nose, I get more of a pear and apple kind of smell than I'm used to tasting from a lot of Saisons.
Yeah, and a little bit of like that, it kind of gets that dried fruit character, a little fruit roll-up-y.
If I had to guess, is more along the, at least how this one fermented, the Belgian profile. Being a little bit more fruity and a little bit less that hay barnyard kind of feel that I'm normally getting.
Little sweet middle. There's a drying bitterness at the back end, but
it's worth noting that the temperature of fermentation on this was right around 72. Okay. So not super high for a lot of saisons, meaning it's not going to necessarily amplify that. Like if it was Belgian saison, that kind of pungent profile that can sometimes give.
I like the fact that the bitterness lingers a little bit. You know, you just took a sip of beer and it's going to hang with you for a while. It's not, it doesn't disappear right away.
Yeah.
It's not astringent. My palate still feels wet. It's got a nice characteristic to it, but it hangs for a minute too. Like, you're sipping on something with some character here.
The fruitiness definitely balances it. And I would say that even though I'm not going to distinctly relate it to like black pepper or white pepper, there is a phenol note to this one.
Incredible clarity to me.
Yeah,
I mean, considering what the
range
other two
is,
look like, and just being a saison yeast, like that's
Let's go on to the Coast to Coast, which is that's a saison blend that Omega Yeast Labs does.
That's got some pungency in the aroma.
So the Coast to Coast is a blend of a classic farmhouse saison yeast and a Brettanomyces strain.
Oh, that makes sense why it's got a little more of that funk on it. Flavor to me starts creeping more towards the mushroomy, earthy characteristics that are like a sweet soil almost, and maybe like
almost a little leathery as well.
I don't mean this in like the bright, sweet citrus note, but there's like something about like a fresh rip on a peel that is present in that as well. And again, that's kind of a glass fullness.
It's way different. It's in good balance still. It's just the nose to me isn't the nose that I necessarily want on a saison, if I'm being honest.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
After getting past that and like taking a sip and getting the full experience, I actually really enjoy this beer.
It's pretty crisp and clean in its characteristic, like mid to late palate. The nose is kind of intense, maybe not your favorite. Maybe other people are going to love this because it's very characterful.
Yeah.
Mid to late palate, though, it's pretty clean for what it is. And just going back to the other one quickly there to taste, so much more malted barley impression come off of this. Right, like raw ingredient here, malt comes through more than what I'm tasting here with the Coast to Coast.
Yeah, the Saisonsteins Monster definitely lends itself to complement the malt flavor a little bit more. Whereas the Coast to Coast is definitely a little bit more like yeast dominated. Right, let's go on to the Jovaru, which Jovaru, I believe, I want to say, is that a Quake strain or is that just a different?
Much more similar look than the first two kind of comparison. This is closer to the Coast to Coast.
Jovaru is a Lithuanian farmhouse strain.
Oh, cool.
So not your typical French or Belgian Saison, but definitely just another wild saison yeast that it seems like they captured and kind of took into their own in their own world.
Yeah. So fascinating stuff going on here in the Eastern European realm. Lithuania, Latvia too, I believe, has this really cool, unique farmhouse, like subset culture for beer fermentation and process. As worldwide popular as beer is, there's still stuff that you've never tasted. And this is an example of that.
This has got a lot of like lemon and like almost rose hip kind of complement. So it's got a little bit of a sweetness. It's like a raisin sweetness.
I dig that, yeah.
And then it's got that lemon and then maybe a little bit of black pepper note to it as well.
Yeah.
So.
See, I get a little bit of honey out of that aroma. It's more present than our first, but maybe not as extreme as our second. we've got some kind of mid-range here where there's a yeast-driven note, but I'm getting a little bit of the raw ingredient background.
Yeah, the malt has a chance to shine through, but that sweetness really kind of drives some different flavors. It drives some natural fruitiness to it. And the fact that it's just a little bit more, it feels acidic to me. It feels like a little bit more acidic than the second one. This one to me, this feels more like a classic farmhouse. It feels more like I'm getting that barnyard kind of note, that kind of like hay or alfalfa, how it has a little bit of like lemony brightness if you smell it, but it's also got that robust earthiness behind it.
I'm really feeling that late palate on this, that earthiness. It's mellow, it's present, but it's not drying me out. It's not particularly bitter. Like, I think the first one might be the most bitter of the bunch.
Yeah.
This one has some of that. Last beer, this Jove, is just, it's so drinkable. It's incredible in its complexity.
At the temperature that we fermented at, I think the Jovaru is probably the one that I would go with. The Saisonsteins Monster, I think, is probably the one that, of the beers that we have, most people will drink more of. It's got that little, like I said, appley and pear sweetness that I think kind of drives, like, keep wanting to keep drink this. The Coast to Coast, I think, for most people, that kind of mushroomy pungence on the nose is going to be like you love it or you only a little bit love it.
Yeah. Fascinating beer. Really exciting stuff happening in the Coast to Coast. All of these, I think, would do great with food, but I bet you could do some killer cheese and beer pairings.
Oh, for sure.
With this middle guy here, this Coast to Coast, but really all of them, ultimately.
All right, if you had to rank them real quick before we close out, if you had to rank them, your personal palate.
Just what I'm grabbing.
Yeah.
I do like the Jove. Great balance, complexity's there, but the drinkability carries through for me. If I'm reaching for this style, this is tough. I'm not a huge mushroom guy, so I'll probably go to the Monster second, or a little bit more clarity, a little bit more ingredient expression with some yeast-driven complexity, and then I do the Coast to Coast. Coast to Coast is cool, but it's a very specific profile. I need to be in the mood for that.
Yeah, I would say honestly the exact same order. So Jovaru, then the Saisonsteins Monster, then the Coast to Coast. But I will add that I think if you fermented all of these 10 degrees warmer, Jovaru would probably move into last place for me. I would guess, I'd be willing to bet that the Coast to Coast would move into number 1. Saisonsteins Monster would still be number 2, but better than it is now. And the Jovaru would be number 3. Anyways, that wraps up this rundown on the 3 different Omega yeasts that we use to ferment the Saisons. Let us know. Let us know what you think. If you've used these yeasts and have comments on them or different experiences fermenting at different temperatures, comment those below. If you want to support the channel, you can always link over to our website for kit ingredients or t-shirts or sweatshirts, and also follow us on Instagram to keep up to date on some nuanced stuff that we don't necessarily do on YouTube. Follow River City and Todd on social medias. I'll link all that below. And he also does a weekly Sunday radio show.
Yeah, Think Beer.
Which I will link in the description below as well. Thanks for hanging with us. Tell your grandma that I want some mashed potatoes. Perfect.